We're getting older now, but we all remember the video games that mean the most to us. From Earthbound to Zelda and everything in between. Join me, Metroids Primed, as I take you on a journey to show you the video games that changed my life.
Hey guys, welcome back for another episode. Today I'm going to be doing a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and that is my top 10 Sega Genesis video games of all time.
Genesis does
16-bit arcade graphics.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does
16-bit sports action.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis does.
Get Joe Montana free, Pat Riley free, Buster Douglas free, Super Monaco GP free, or Collins free. What Nintendo does.
And I had a hard time narrowing down my top 10 list here, but I've got 10 of my favorites. But let's take a look at the first one. And my number 10 game is Altered Beast. Altered Beast was a really cool platformer for the Sega Genesis. You could transform into a werewolf, into a dragon, and eventually the golden werewolf, which was the strongest form of the beast you could change into. But it was a really good game. It was one of the first titles for the Sega Genesis, and it really showed the power of the Sega Genesis when it first came out. So a really good game here. And this game is fun even for you non-sports lovers, and that is Mutant League Football. And Mutant League Football is an incredible, incredible football game. You can plant mines on the field, you can bribe the ref, and he will call penalties for like farting and just crazy stuff. You can throw bombs at players, so it's more of a just wacky football game. And I always had a lot of fun playing this over at my neighbor's house back in the day. But a really, really cool game. Number 8 is a really interesting game called The Immortal. And it's kind of an RPG aspect to it and a platformer at the same time. And it's definitely really cool. You play a wizard going through a labyrinth. You have to dodge traps, you have to kill monsters, and find keys to unlock certain parts of the dungeon. But really cool, so check out The Immortal if you haven't done so. Number 7. Number 7 is an awesome game, and that's Castlevania Bloodlines. Castlevania Bloodlines was a quintessential game for the series, and it was the only Castlevania game for the Sega Genesis. Whereas Super Nintendo owners got 2 great games, Sega Genesis owners only got Bloodlines, and it was a great game though, and definitely a must-own for Castlevania lovers out there. Now, this is a very interesting game, my number 6, and it is Comic Zone. Comic Zone actually takes you into a comic book. You're a comic book artist, and you fall asleep on one of your drawings one night, and you actually get sucked into the comic book world. And you actually fight screen to screen, tearing through a comic book's pages. So you have to actually punch through into the next section of the comic book. Really cool, very good graphics, very good design and control. And this is a must-own for the Sega Genesis. I remember my friend Jason, I would go over to his house. He lived right up the road, and he would rent this over and over and over again. And we would just sit there and play it non-stop, but a great game. My number 5 is a game that all Sega Genesis owners have to own, and that is Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic the Hedgehog really made Sega Genesis a contender with the Super Nintendo. It was a great platformer, and Sonic actually became Sega's mascot after the popularity of the game. And I know playing it, this was the game that everybody popped in first for the Sega Genesis. Had to play Sonic the Hedgehog at least every time you turned on the system. So that was a great game. My number 4 is a game that saw many different variations over the years on many different systems. But my personal favorite is the Sega Genesis version, and that is Pirate's Gold. And I'm sure a lot of you have played Sid Meier's Pirates over the years. We even had a recent variation in the past several years on the Xbox 360, PC, PS3. And this was a really good version for the Sega Genesis. Had updated graphics from the NES version. And sailing around in your ship, taking over forts, taking over ships, and sword fighting, and just everything. I mean, this was a great game. And this is definitely a version that's worth checking out. And my number 3 is an amazing platformer from the Sega Genesis, and that is Shinobi 3: Return of the Ninja Master. This game had amazing graphics, amazing gameplay, and just a really cool platforming game. The ninja was just so awesome. This is a great series for the Sega Genesis, but this is the best game to me personally. And my number 2 is the game I played the most on Sega Genesis as a kid, and that is Mortal Kombat. I think we can all agree the Mortal Kombat version on Sega Genesis was the best version because you could actually enter in the blood code and play pretty much a very accurate representation of the port from the arcade. And awesome game. Mortal Kombat is something that helped re-energize the fighting game market back in the day. After Mortal Kombat came to the scene, you saw a huge fight between the big names in the industry in the fighting games. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, and then Killer Instinct came along a little later. And this is the game that really, to me, made that fighting market big again. And it was a great game for the home console. And this is a must-own. And my favorite game for the Sega Genesis, my number 1, is Golden Axe. Golden Axe was an amazing beat-em-up game for the Sega Genesis. I remember playing it with my brother back in the arcade, and then bringing it home and it being a great port of the arcade version. It was released on the Xbox Live Arcade not too long ago, so even if you don't have a Sega Genesis, you can still play this and play it cooperatively with some friends or even somebody online. But a great game, one of those classics from the Sega Genesis and from the arcade years ago. But this is my favorite Sega Genesis game. Alright guys, that's my top 10 list. I'm sure yours are a lot different from mine. Of course, remember, this isn't any sort of definitive list. This is just my personal viewpoint of my favorite games for the system. I'd love to hear what y'all's top 10 favorite Sega Genesis games are. And maybe if you think I missed out on something, and it might be something I've never played before, so definitely give me some suggestions down below. Let me know what your opinions are on it. And guys, if you liked the video, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. And as always, we'll see you next time.